Welcome to the launch event of the OECD report, Enhancing the Resilience of Communications Networks. We are delighted to have you with us today as the OECD presents this significant report. Thank you all for joining us in the room and online. My name is Sergio Riolobos, and I have the honor of serving as the Dean of the Professional Association of Telecommunications Engineers in the Valencia region. We are honored to welcome Mr. Jerry Sheehan, Director of Science, Technology, and Innovation at the OECD. Joining us online, Mrs. Alexia González Fanfalone, Head of the Connectivity Services and Infrastructures Unit, attending online. And here, in person, Mrs. Inmaculada Cava, Policy Analyst in the same directorate and the main author of this report. They will share with us the key insights and findings of this relevant study. In addition, we have an exceptional international panel that will provide us with diverse perspectives of the network resilience drawn from real-world experiences. We will hear from Daisuke Yamakawa, representing the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications of Japan. Mr. Luke Kyo, Industry Analyst at UCLA, and Mrs. Carmen Sanchez Muñoz, Director of Regulations and Public Affairs at Digitales. Before we begin, please note that this event is being live-streamed by the OECD. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. José Capilla, Dean of the University Polytechnic de Valencia. Please, Mr. Capilla.
Thank you, Sergio. Well, it is a pleasure to be here hosting this event, very important event of OECD in our university. It's an honor also to have here the ambassador, the permanent representative of Spain at the OECD organism, and also our president, former president, but always president, a person that, well, I would say I would like to take this opportunity to emphasize the importance that he's giving to the academia, the support that he has given always to our universities, especially the Valencian University. So thanks again, Mr. President, and also for the support that you have given also to our university, to the Technical University of Valencia. So welcome again, because please feel at home when you come to UPV. So also welcome to everybody attending to this presentation of this report. Dear Sergio, also Marta Valenciaga, I don't know, she will be here also, well, she's in person. Also to the panelists, it's going to be very interesting, I'm sure. So I'm going to try to stay here for the duration of this event. And also welcome Mrs. Inmaculada Cava, that will be presented. I already had the opportunity to say hi to you. And to Mr. Jerry Sheehan, online. Hello, Director. And welcome to our university, although online. Just here to welcome you, but I would like to stress the importance of the relations and the connections that this university has had in the past with OECD. Some of our professors, of our experts have been working in different fields, since artificial intelligence to, well, topics in tertiary education. And I want to remember, I was telling that to Mr. Chimo Puig, that some years ago, and I was involved in the organization of that event, we had here the former General Secretary of OECD, Mr. Urria, very nice person, and we had the pleasure to have a big event with him in our Paraninfo here at UPV. So the potential of our university in this topic that brings here all of us together is, we are working in some of the challenge that the industry and the society is dealing with regarding, the problems that our high dependence of communication networks has. We are now subject to the vulnerabilities, of course, of any infrastructure, but also to malicious actions. And we are very, very dependent, as we all know. A couple of weeks ago, we had this terrible failure, the blackout, that affected more than 50 million people in Spain, in Portugal, also south of France. And all our communications networks, most of them went down. And we felt for the first time how vulnerable we are. I can tell you that as rector of this university, I'm very worried about that. And we are also thinking about some measures we should take and some things we should plan to avoid the problems that these kind of failures can cause, not only because of blackout, but there could be also because even malicious actions could be affecting maybe to these ocean connections that we have with the cables. Or we have heard since we had this conflict in Ukraine that it seems there are suspicions that some people are trying to cut these oceanic cables. So, well, we are very, very vulnerable. And we have people working towards how to define actions to have more resilience communications networks, applying artificial intelligence, also working in more, let's say, networks with more redundancy, and some other measures that are very important for us. And I hope that in the future, our researchers can be working also with the Association of Telecommunications Engineers, with OECD, with the industry in improving our robustness against these threats, these things that are threatening us. So welcome again. It is a pleasure to be here with you. An honor also to receive our ambassador, Mr. Chimo Puig, and enjoy the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean, for setting the stage of this launch event. Next, it is now my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Chimo Puig y Ferrer, Ambassador of Spain to the OECD, who will deliver the opening remarks for this launch. Please, Mr.
Thank you. Yes. Estimado rector, que feliz estoy de volver a estar aquí. Decano del Colegio Oficial de Ingenieros de Telecomunicaciones, investigadores, miembros de la OCDE, estimada Inmaculada Cava, amigas y amigos. Para mí es un honor participar en este acto, en esta bienvenida a la presentación de un informe de la OCDE sobre resiliencia de las redes de comunicaciones. Quiero empezar a agradecer a la OCDE por haber elegido Valencia para esta presentación y en especial al director de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación, querido Jerry, y por supuesto a Inmaculada Cava, sin la cual este evento hubiera sido imposible. Gracias al Colegio Oficial de Ingenieros de Telecomunicaciones, apreciado Sergio, y a la Escuela Técnica Superior de Ingenieros de Telecomunicaciones de la Universidad Polytechnic. Dice Abelino Corma, uno de los investigadores más reconocidos de esta universidad, que la ciencia es el motor del cambio social y que la solución a la mayor parte de los problemas, incluyendo los provocados por el ser humano, necesitan de la ciencia y de la tecnología. Esa es la misión que la Universidad Politécnica de Valencia ha interpretado tan bien en nuestra sociedad: innovar para dar respuestas. Esa es la misión de la OCDE también, diseñar políticas públicas que mejoren la vida de las personas. Con ese espíritu, la OCDE ha alumbrado este informe sobre la resiliencia de las redes de telecomunicaciones. Reitero el agradecimiento al director por haber posibilitado, el director de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación de la OCDE, por haber facilitado que la organización haga esta presentación descentralizada y aquí en Valencia. Y a todas las personas que han trabajado duramente durante meses y meses para que este informe sea una realidad. Hace poco en España el gran apagón visibilizó una vez más la trascendencia de las comunicaciones. Sin comunicaciones no podemos saber de nuestros familiares, ni conocemos qué ocurre ahí fuera, ni tenemos asegurada una respuesta a la emergencia. Sin comunicaciones, y en ningún sitio es más oportuno que decirlo que aquí, nos amputan una de las dimensiones más definitorias del ser humano desde la revolución digital. Somos Homo sapiens, pero también somos cada vez más Homo comunicans. Y por ello es exigible garantizar la resiliencia en las redes y avanzar en su perfeccionamiento y seguridad. Sin duda esto también es welfare state, también es estado del bienestar. Hoy aquí expertos bien vanguardistas profundizarán en el amplio informe de la OCDE desarrollado por el Grupo de Trabajo de Servicios e Infraestructuras de Conectividad. La mirada local y global se unen en este panel internacional para compartir buenas prácticas actuales y perfilar los retos más inmediatos y más pragmáticos, si se quiere. Quiero dar las gracias por su participación en el panel, sin duda, como bien decía el rector, al Ministerio de Asuntos Interiores y Comunicaciones de Japón, a la Asociación Española Digital ES, a la empresa UCLA por su participación y a todos los organizadores y participantes en este acto, con mención especial al Colegio Oficial de Ingenieros de Telecomunicaciones, a la Universidad Polytechnic de Valencia. En este nuevo informe de la OCDE se da la circunstancia de su oportunidad para ayudar a la definición de políticas públicas en todo este ámbito. Como embajador de España ante este organismo, quiero aprovechar la oportunidad también para dar a conocer la valiosa labor de la OCDE. La OCDE, desgraciadamente, en España, muchas veces para el gran público se residencia o en el ámbito económico, en el outlook, como uno de los faros fundamentales en todo lo que significa la macroeconomía y los indicadores macros, y por otra parte, más en el ámbito popular, en PISA, el informe PISA, que es fundamental para evaluar el funcionamiento de la educación. Por eso es muy importante, y una de mis misiones fundamentales es que haya más OCDE en España y más España en la OCDE. Y por eso también estamos en esta campaña de utilización del español, para que el español, que es la segunda lengua en estos momentos hablada del mundo, tenga también mayor presencia en la OCDE. He tenido la oportunidad de comprobar, ahora en este año que estoy allí, en la OCDE, la profundidad de los estudios, la extensión, la calidad, y por eso creo que es una buena labor que la OCDE difunda también su presencia no solo en los 38 países miembros, sino en lo que afecta a la globalidad del mundo. Invito por ello a todas las administraciones a aprovechar los recursos de la OCDE, y que pone de manera en este momento absolutamente libre y gratuita a todas las instituciones, a todos los organismos, a todas las universidades. Afortunadamente las universidades sí que tienen una relación, como bien decía el rector, mucho más estabilizada y muchos investigadores con la OCDE, pero yo creo que las administraciones públicas y los gobiernos deberían tener la capacidad de aprender más de las buenas políticas que están haciendo en otros ámbitos. Y en ese sentido, tengo que confesar que a mí me hubiera gustado conocer más la OCDE en mi etapa de presidente del Gobierno valenciano. En definitiva, tenemos una responsabilidad compartida a las universidades, los colegios profesionales, la OCDE, las administraciones, mejorar la vida de las personas, mejorar, en definitiva, nuestra sociedad. Porque la primera de las comunicaciones que hay que asegurar es la que facilita la convivencia. La convivencia basada en la razón, en los principios de la Ilustración, y para esa convivencia es absolutamente necesaria la ciencia y la tecnología, que, como bien dice Abel y Corma, serán siempre el motor del cambio social y nos impulsan a una vida más justa y mejor. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean and Ambassador, for setting the stage for this launch event. Your remarks have underscored the critical importance of network resilience in today's policy agenda and highlighted the OECD's essential role in shaping global policies. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Jerry Sheehan, Director of Science, Technology, and Innovation Directorate at the OECD. Director Sheehan will present the main insights from the newly released OECD report, Enhancing the Resilience of Communication Networks. As director of this important directorate, Mr. Sheehan oversees a wide range of OECD activities, coordinating the work of 6 committees. These span from scientific and technological policy to industry, innovation, entrepreneurship, and digital policy, making him exceptionally well positioned to provide a comprehensive perspective on the findings on this report. Mr. Sheehan, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, dear Ambassador Puig, Dean Capilla, President Balenciaga Arrieta, Director Gonzalez, all our distinguished colleagues here and esteemed guests. Let me wish you a good morning. Buenos dias todos. And I want to start my remarks by expressing my sincere thanks, my gratitude to the Polytechnic University of Valencia, the School of Telecommunications Engineering, as well as the official Professional Association of Telecommunication Engineers, for generously hosting today's event. I think my only regret is that I'm not there in Valencia with you, but we very much appreciate you organizing the event and participating in this with us today. I'm delighted to be able to launch the OECD report on enhancing the resilience of communication networks, and to be able to do so in Spain, and particularly in Valencia, whereas, as was noted, the devastating floods last year, I highlighted the need to strengthen the resilience of communications infrastructure to help face unpredictable shocks and disruptions. I think these kinds of incidents remind us that resilience is not an abstract concept, but it's an urgent and real-world priority. Connectivity, as the backbone of the digital transformation, underpins nearly every aspect of our societies and economies, from personal communication to government and financial services to healthcare and education and beyond. So that means that strengthening network resilience, that is the ability of communication networks to withstand and recover from disruptions, is pivotal to ensuring the continuity of daily activities. It's also essential if we want to be able to recover from different sorts of disasters and crises that might affect us. Yet at the same time, we find that connectivity infrastructure is increasingly under strain. Blackouts, cyber attacks, natural disasters reveal their vulnerabilities. And when communication networks go down, the ripple effects are immediate and severe, and they're felt across sectors and across borders, as we've just seen. The electricity outage that we witnessed in Spain and Portugal and even parts of France just last month, which disrupted communication services and affected payment systems, public transport, even the emergency communication systems, right, is just one example. Across the OECD and beyond, we observe a growing number of large-scale incidents, some of which are caused by cyber attacks, others by natural disasters, others are systemic failures. And the report that we're launching today highlights that these shocks are escalating. So within just the European Union, for example, system failures accounted for more than 93% of lost user hours caused by network disruptions in 2022. And natural disasters triggered a record 168 million network incidents. That's nearly 3 times as many as in 2019. And meanwhile, I think as was mentioned as well, undersea cables, which carry more than 99% of global internet traffic, experience approximately 150 disruptions each year. So in this context, where communications networks are critical infrastructure, strengthening their resilience has become a top policy priority across OECD countries and beyond. But we see that resilience, it's a complex and multi-layered challenge that encompasses technical, organizational, and economic dimensions. And it requires robust strategies that anticipate and mitigate risks, ensuring network continuity even in times of crisis. So the report addresses this challenge by highlighting practical, technical, and organizational measures to better secure network infrastructure. And it presents key policy trends and best practices that we've gleaned from OECD countries. So let me take a minute just to highlight some of the findings and share these with you, and we'll have a chance to discuss them more in the panel after my presentation. First, it's essential technical measures for network resilience include things like enhancing infrastructure redundancy, robust routing of communications, requires energy backup, and crisis response mechanisms. We see frontier technologies such as AI-driven monitoring and automated response systems that can enhance communication network resilience by helping predict and detect network issues early, which enables dynamic reconfiguration during disruptions. Second, measuring resilience is particularly complex because resilience itself is multidimensional and is often difficult to quantify. So the report reviews existing frameworks and identifies data sources that can help policymakers and regulators better monitor the quality and continuity of services. And it calls for more harmonization of resilience metrics across all phases of network disruption, enhancing data comparability across countries. Third, the report analyzes strategies and policies that are implemented in OECD countries to enhance network resilience, and it highlights the best practices. Our analysis reveals that although there is no one-size-fits-all model, there is a growing convergence around several key policy directions. And recognizing the multifaceted challenge to enhance communication network resilience, OECD countries are adopting diverse policy responses. These include mandatory redundancy requirements, incident reporting obligations, incentives for infrastructure sharing, and frameworks for cross-sectoral cooperation. We're also seeing a shift toward more proactive public policies, as ensuring communication network resilience is not a matter solely for communication operators, but rather this critical policy issue is integrated into broader national digital strategies and communication sector regulations. For example, some countries now require operators to meet threshold resilience metrics, such as maintaining network availability even in crisis scenarios, and ensuring redundancy in critical infrastructure. Incentivizing investment in resilient infrastructure is also essential. We find that market forces alone may not be enough to ensure the level of redundancy and diversity that's needed to withstand high-impact events, particularly in remote or low-density areas. Public funding mechanisms, often through public-private partnerships, are increasingly used to strengthen networks. Cross-sectoral collaboration is also becoming increasingly important. Communication networks are interconnected with other critical activities, such as energy systems, transportation, and emergency services. So countries are creating coordinated crisis management protocols that involve telecom operators, cybersecurity agencies, and civil society, civil protection authorities. Finally, international coordination is key to ensuring that communication network resilience remains as networks span across borders. A cyber attack or a disruption of undersea cables in one country or under one sea can quickly impact its neighbors. So this is why OECD strongly advocates for cross-border cooperation. We need data sharing and alignment of standards to help increase network resilience. So my hope is that this report will serve as a valuable tool for policymakers, regulators, and operators alike in Spain and other OECD countries and beyond. We see it serving as a guide, a benchmark, and as a foundation for cooperation that can enhance network resilience. So I want to invite you all to download the full report, which is available online at the OECD publication webpage. I'm also looking forward, as I hope you are, to learning insights from our panel discussion today that will draw from the real world experiences and bring different global perspectives. So in sum, I think the stakes are high as we become a more digital society and a digital economy, but so is the opportunity. And from our perspective, this is our chance to better embed communication network resilience as a foundation of the digital transformation, to ensure that our societies remain connected, secure, and prepared for the future. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to present a few highlights and an overview of the report today. And I look forward very much to the panel discussion and further dissemination of our results. Thank you again for hosting us here in Valencia. And I turn the floor back to you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Xian, for your insightful remarks. This report illustrates the OECD's commitment to evidence-based policy making by providing countries with the tools to design effective public policies. Congratulations to you and your team on this remarkable achievement. It is now my pleasure to welcome Mrs. Inmaculada Cava Ferreruela, policy analyst at the Connectivity Services and Infrastructure Unit and the principal author of this report we are presenting today. Mrs. Cava is not only a valued colleague, but also a distinguished telecommunications engineer with a PhD from this university. Her extensive experience spans various roles within the Spanish government at both the national and regional levels, as well as the European Commission. Mrs. Cava, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you the professional association. Sorry. Thank you for all the presence here. We're pleased to present here the report Enhancing the Resilience of Communication Networks, recently published in May. The report is now available on the OECD website. This publication is part of an ongoing series of reports and country reviews produced by the Connectivity Services and Infrastructure units within this directorate. Our most recent publications include The Environmental Sustainability of Communication Networks, published in February, Financing Broadband Networks of the Future, published in June 2024, and looking ahead, stay tuned for upcoming publications covering a range of exciting topics such as market developments involving new players and services, including non-terrestrial networks and direct-to-device services. But why a report on network resilience? As Director Sheehan has emphasized, enhancing network resilience is becoming an increasing priority on the political agenda of OECD countries. However, the complexity of communication infrastructures, the rapid pace of technological changes, and the diversity of threats complicate the policymaking process. So this report aims to aid policymakers in navigating these complexities by providing a holistic view and offering relevant insights to develop effective strategies in this crucial policy domain. So to this purpose, the report focuses on three main areas. First, it delves into the technical aspects of network resilience, outlining the primary threats to critical network components and the technical measures to prevent outages and ensure swift service recovery. Second, it examines network resilience metrics to explore their applicability and relevance, and goes through the various data sources. And third, the report explores the role of public policies and regulation, presenting the strategies and policies OECD countries have implemented to strengthen network resilience. Let's take a closer look at the technical aspects here at the School of Engineering, starting with its critical components and the critical components of networks, those whose failures can have far-reaching consequences. At the heart of any network, we have transmission networks, the essential pathways that connect our digital world. Among them, submarine cables stand out, carrying more than 97% of global internet traffic. A disruption of one of them affects entire regions of the world. Moreover, as networks become increasingly software-driven and the expansion of cloud services and content delivery networks, co-location facilities and data centers have become essential for maintaining network continuity. And what are the main causes of network failures? The reality is that network disruptions are driven by diverse and complex causes. System failures, both hardware and software, are the most commonly reported cause, accounting for 72% of incidents and 93% of downtime in the European Union in 2022. Human errors and malicious actions, such as cyber attacks, also play a significant role. Natural events, although less frequent, are increasingly impactful, with a record number of user hours lost in 2022. Understanding these critical components and their vulnerabilities is the first step toward building more resilient networks. So, how we do enhance networks resilience to cope with these disruptive events? The answer lies in fundamental network design principles, redundancy and diversity. Redundancy means having backup systems in place, ensuring that if one component fails, another takes over. These include backup power resources, such as batteries, which keep networks running during outages. Diversity is about avoiding single points of failure. It means designing networks so that not all components are exposed to the same risks. For example, here in the figure, using a mix of terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks like satellites can ensure communication continues even if ground-based networks are disrupted by natural disasters such as earthquakes or floods. But implementing redundancy and diversity comes at a cost. These measures require significant investment, and network operators carefully weigh this cost against the potential benefits. This is where policymakers have a crucial role to play, finding a balance between encouraging resilience and sustainability of networks. We now turn to the essential role of metrics in shaping informed policies and assessing their effectiveness. However, measuring network resilience poses significant challenges due to its multiple dimensions, which result in a wide range of metrics and the lack of international standardized framework. In this context, the report presents a categorization of existing resilient metrics and highlights commonly used ones. Broadly, these metrics can be divided into two main categories. Impact metrics. These measure the consequences of network outages, such as the number of users affected or the geographical areas impacted. The other branch is network resilience metrics. These focus on assessing the inherent characteristics of a network, providing insights into its availability to withstand disruptions. Data on network resilience metrics is primarily sourced from network operators. In addition, third-party sources provide valuable information. Tools such as Down Detector from UCLA, present in our panel, collect and analyze connectivity problems reported by users, which can be aggregated to estimate the effect of the network outage. This figure is included in our report, then compares OECD countries based on this indicator. The third part of the report explores the role of public policy and regulation in enhancing the resilience of communication networks. While network operators are primarily responsible for implementing resilience measures, the critical nature of communication services leads to government intervention to ensure high resilience levels. But what are the policy options? We have analyzed OECD policies and developed a framework for categorizing them. This provides an overview of the current policy landscape, illustrated with examples of the OECD countries. Declassification framework for resilient measures is built around two key dimensions: scope and policy instruments. Starting with the scope, which is represented by the segments of the circle in the figure, the report identifies 5 main areas: promoting infrastructure enhancements, enhancing disaster preparedness and response planning, establishing robust metrics and reporting mechanisms, fostering the adoption of advanced technologies, and expanding and upgrading public safety and emergency networks. The second dimension focuses on policy instruments, represented by circles in the figure. These instruments take a step-by-step approach, ranging from information measures to facilitation, funding mechanisms, and strict regulation in some countries. In conclusion, the report highlights the importance of adopting a comprehensive approach to network resilience, identifying several key policy trends. First and foremost, collaboration and information sharing is critical. Effective resilience relies on strong partnerships among network operators, emergency services, authorities, and other key stakeholders. These groups must work together, exchanging knowledge and maintaining high standards, especially during crises. Second, reporting and transparency are essential. Many countries require network operators to report significant network outages promptly. However, the lack of a unified global framework for resilience metrics makes it challenging to compare performance across different regions or countries. Third, regulatory measures play a pivotal role. Many countries have established requirements for operators to meet resilience standards, including adopting design principles like redundancy and diversity in their networks. Fourth, investment is crucial. Resilience comes at a cost, and some governments have stepped in with financial incentives to encourage the adoption of resilient technologies and the upgrading of network infrastructure. Finally, the importance of supporting public safety and emergency services cannot be overstated. These networks must be reliable and capable of maintaining connectivity even in catastrophic situations, as we've seen in Valencia lately. I will stop here, but I encourage you to explore the full report, where you will find a complete analysis and the complete results of our research. And thank you very much for your attention.
For clearly presenting the main findings of the report we are showcasing today. This report exemplifies the OECD's commitment to evidence-based policymaking, as approach the ambassador emphasized at the outset, combining rigorous analysis to guide effective public policies. Congratulations once again on this outstanding work. With that, I will now invite you to lead the panel discussion. This session will bring the report's conclusion to life, featuring real-world experiences and diverse perspectives from our esteemed panelists. Please, Inma, and our panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm pleased to welcome you to this panel discussion titled From Local to Global Lessons Learned about Network Resilience from Real Experiences. In this session, we will delve into the findings of the OECD report, bringing two conclusions to life through real experiences cases in Spain, Japan, and also with measurement from UCLA, also present here. So today we have the privilege of hosting a distinguished panel of experts who will share their insights of the importance of the resilient networks and the policies needed to ensure its robustness. First, we are joined by Mr. Luc Keogh, industry analyst for Europe at UCLA. Luc is a telecom analyst, consultant, and entrepreneur with extensive expertise in fixed and mobile networks, electric mobility, and strategy. He has recently conducted an in-depth analysis of the scale and magnitude of mobile network disruptions in Spain and Portugal by the historic power outages on 4th May. We also welcome Mrs. Carmen Sanchez Muñoz, Director of Regulation of Public Affairs at Digitales, an association representing the leading technology companies in Spain, including Telefónica and Vodafone, two companies directly affected by the blackout. Finally, joining us virtually from Japan, thank you. We have Mr. Daisuke Yamakawa, Deputy Director of the Multilateral Economic Affairs Office at the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communication of Japan. Daisuke will share Japan's experience in securing communication networks in response to the severe earthquake that hit the Noto Peninsula on 1st January 2024. Without further ado, let's begin with the panel discussion. So the first round of questions to Mr. Luc Guillot. Luc, your recent analysis sheds light on the impact of the 4th May power outages on Spain. So could you elaborate a bit more on the conclusions of this analysis and share insights about the metrics that UCLA uses for analyzing these kind of disruptions? Thank you.
Super, absolutely. Thanks very much for having me, Emma, and thank you everyone for hosting this lovely event, and congratulate Jerry and the whole team, and Emma in particular, on the launch of the new report. It's fantastic to see, and I suppose so timely given the events of late, and delighted to be here. And I think, you know, UCLA as a company has a particular role to play in monitoring the resilience of networks and sharing those insights and being, I suppose, an independent voice in the industry, working alongside policymakers, governments and operators. And for me personally, I lead our research in Europe looking at the evolution of the telecoms market, working closely with operators, governments, policymakers, and it's been a fascinating period to look at and examine the impact and the scale of the event that happened here on the Iberian Peninsula very recently. I think, you know, it follows quite closely on the footsteps of other severe events. You mentioned the flooding, terrible flooding tragedy here, and as well where I'm from in the UK and Ireland at the start of this year, there was record storm Aowen, which caused severe damage to the power grid as well, more localized obviously than this big outage in Spain more recently. But I think it has really opened the eyes of policymakers, regulators and operators. And I'm delighted actually to be here today and to actually be able to showcase some of the data that we've been working on, which we will be publishing in more detail very soon. But this is actually a first glimpse at kind of some of the more advanced metrics when you mentioned there, Emma, kind of the impact analysis and impact metrics. This is precisely what we can contribute here today. So maybe I'll just flick to the slides that we have.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Just to get going.
¿Es la presentación? Yeah, that's one.
Super. Super. Now we're all back to where we should be. Perfect. So just, I suppose, a little bit of a background on UCLA before I go into some of the data that I want to kind of showcase here today. Many of you may well know UCLA, the global network intelligence leader. Probably the most well-known aspect of the company is the consumer-facing speed test application, which is consumer-initiated testing. So it is a leading application used by consumers to diagnose simple connectivity problems. So if they're on the go and they want to check how fast their network is, check latency, all of that, speed test is used by the consumer. And it gives close to real-time information around the performance of networks. So to enable competitive benchmarking, trends over time, all of that. And it's a very good tool in particular for looking at how networks performed when they stayed up. So we do know, and we can show some of this data very soon in Spain, that obviously the inclusion of battery autonomy, generators, all of that meant that not all sites went down. And therefore the consumer initiated speed test data is very useful for looking at you know, the impact of congestion on a less dense site grid, for example, during an outage like this. And Emma referenced down detector, which I suppose is best described as a tsunami warning system for outages. So if an individual or consumer, you know, is experiencing a problem when they're, you know, gaming or watching La Liga or something like that, and they search is Movistar down or whatever, then that is aggregated, and we can see in real time the source of different service disruptions. Now we have some other brands as well that are maybe a little bit less relevant in the context here, but also play a big role around network intelligence. Root Metrics, which is control testing of network performance versus speed test, which is consumer initiated. So I just kind of wanted to start off and really to, I suppose, emphasize some of the points that you made, Emma, and some of the points as well that Jerry made previously around networks being inherently fragile, and that so many different components are outside the control and the remit of the MNOs themselves. And I find it quite interesting that the entire 5G cycle has been, I suppose, predicated on the allure of 5G slicing and some of the new capabilities that new features like slicing would enable. And one of those that I suppose the operators would have originally touted was around mission critical communications. You know, there would be a dedicated slice for public services, for example. But I think a lot of that now, there's a lot of questions over the I suppose the arguments behind those propositions, in that the network itself, the slice itself, is only as robust as the power redundancy within the network. So you can have, you know, an end-to-end 5G SA slice on a public mobile network, but if the sites that are serving the end user or the enterprise that's on that slice go down, it doesn't make a difference if there's a slice there or not. And the same is true for tweaking of QCI settings for network prioritization and those kind of mechanisms, which are used, I suppose, to grant priority maybe to particular network users. But if the sites are not available in the first place, those are of limited efficacy. And I think really good example of some of the comments around the you know, international connectivity and subsea cables is around what happened in Morocco at the time of the power outage, whereby we can see clearly in our data that at the site level, at the radio access level, there was very limited, if any, actual impact or outages, but deeper into the networks of the likes of Orange Morocco in particular, which was highly dependent on subsea connectivity to mainland Spain, there was substantial degradation in network performance. So when we look at qualitative experience measures, so latency to popular websites, for example, the ability to stream videos, there was marked degradation, even if the cells were still active and radiating the deeper layers of the network. And that's, I suppose, an example of whereby a lack of diversity in those subsea routes caused a substantial challenge for the operator and the consumers there. And I believe as well there was kind of spillover effects around peering in mainland Spain and IXPs and all of that. And, you know, at each individual, I suppose, link in the network, there is the need for power and continuity of power supply in particular. And I think, you know, most of discussion around the impact of the grid collapse recently is at the radio network level, so the edge sites. But we did see in Portugal, for example, one MNO whose core was actually impacted by lack of power redundancy. And these are things we're going to share more information on in the coming weeks through our own public research outputs. But it's, I suppose the point to emphasize here is, as you mentioned, redundancy and diversity. And there are so many different links that are outside the control of MNOs. And when I was, I suppose, researching the impact of this outage, I was trying to, you know, think, how can we actually convey this to the average consumer? You know, how can we talk about the impact and the efficacy of different redundancy measures, for example, on the outcomes? And I suppose one of the ways I think that this very closely resembles actually is the pandemic public health messaging, which was all around flattening the curve, driving down the epidemic, the advance of the epidemic, the severity of the epidemic, and the actual impact of large-scale power outages like this can be kind of thought of in a similar way. You can see here kind of two distinct curves that are indicative of two different, I suppose, operator topologies in the network. The teal or the darker curve on the bottom right is an example of an MNO that has invested in very robust power redundancy at the site level, whether it's batteries or generators. And as a result, the peak outage impact, i.e. the number of sites that have been impacted, has been pushed down. So the impact severity is less. And also there's been a delay actually in the onset of that impact. So obviously, you know, the height of the curve here is a good indicator of the breadth of deployment of power redundancy. And the timing of the onset of the impact is a good example of the depth of the battery or the generator, I suppose, capacity. So more widespread battery or generators leads to a suppressed curve, and the depth of those solutions themselves it gives an indication of when the actual impacts will actually start to hit the end subscriber. And for the very first time, actually, we've developed a new custom methodology to examine the proportion of users in Spain and Portugal that were left with no service, as in no ability to call, text, or use data whatsoever in a particular hour period during the outage. So you can see here, this is an animated map in UTC time zone. And, in the hours before the outage and the days before the outage, the baseline no service proportion was less than 0.5%. So less than 0.5% of Spanish network users had no signal, which obviously makes sense. You would expect that. But when we come towards the peak of the outage, when we come towards the end of the day, so in the late evening in particular, we see in large parts of Spain over 50%, so, well over 50%, more than half of network users left with no signal, no service whatsoever, which is really an extraordinary outcome and an impact we haven't seen on this scale before at a country level. And this is using background scan data on Android devices of very large sample numbers. And you can see obviously the polygons quite closely follow the more urbanized parts of Spain, which you would expect in terms of the density of users. So as I mentioned, the peak impact time happened in the late evening, around 9 p.m. local time. That reflects, I suppose, the exhaustion of battery autonomy in the networks themselves, the generators being, I suppose, exhausted as well, and the still waiting on the power to come back. And we did see, actually, very interesting, and I'll emphasize this point, we can very closely see, actually, the level of dependability and the interconnectivity between the electricity grid and the telecoms grid. So if we look later into the night on the day of the impact, the proportion of users who are left with no service has collapsed, which is strongly obviously indicative of the power being restored at the base station level. So when the power was restored, the operator sites started to transmit again very, very quickly, and the impact on subscribers was mitigated. Now, we did see one or two networks, in particular Movistar, that had a much longer recovery tail than the other MNOs. And we are looking into that further, but we would potentially attribute that to the more rural footprint of their subscriber base, rather than necessarily something deeper within the network itself. And you can see here actually that the no service clusters lingering in Andalusia and Galicia actually very closely corroborate the timeline of the grid restoration. So we're able to examine NASA satellite imagery, which validated the fact that in the Andalusian province, large parts of it were still left without power overnight. And as a result, large numbers of subscribers, mobile network subscribers, also had no signal as well during the night, which just shows that level of interconnectivity between the grid and the actual mobile operators themselves. This is an example from Portugal, where we looked at the hourly proportion of users that were left with no service. The MNO details are obscured here, but all of this information, including for Spain, will be published very soon through UCLA. And this is a very good example, a real-world example corroborating the earlier curve chart that I showed you. We can see here the blue, I suppose, waveform. The outage curve is suppressed relative to the other operators. So you have a scenario here whereby on this operator, in and around 15% of subscribers were left with no service at peak, versus on the red operator over 60%. So that's a remarkable gulf between two MNOs. The level of severity is highly asymmetric. And this is just for 3 of the operators. There's another operator that's not included here where the gulf is, or the peak is above 90%, and we will be sharing more about this soon. And if you look at the curve for the blue operator, again, just to emphasize my previous point, the later timing of the peak is indicative of better battery or generator depth. So the batteries or the generators themselves are of larger capacity, therefore the peak impact hits later. And also the fact that the curve is lower, it's suppressed, as I mentioned, indicates that there's more widespread deployment of the generators and the batteries themselves. And of course, look, it's not as simple as looking solely at the redundancy measures in terms of power backup. The networks, obviously, as we know, will implement very aggressive energy conservation measures post-impact. So we did see, for example, 5G availability markedly falling as a result of operators powering down 5G on the base stations to conserve energy. So some MNOs will make different decisions and strategies around the use of different radio technologies. And we can see in our speed test data, for example, that the speeds were heavily impacted. You know, you look at download speed, upload speed, latency, they all took a hit as a result of those energy conservation measures and the collapse in grid density. And as I mentioned, the down detector data, you know, very closely, this is for this for Spain, very closely actually follows in line with the no service impact as well. And the down detector data is quite unique in that you can see the initial massive spike at the start of the outage and then a gap or a fallow period. And that is not indicative of you know, people getting their services back. It just shows the extent of the outage was so severe that people could not even report that they had an outage because they couldn't access the internet in the first instance. And that's why the down detector data is also quite indicative of the timing of service restoration. So you can see actually later in the evening, people started to report problems again when they could get internet access. You know, some people may have been in situations whereby they still had fixed network availability due to maybe a power backup at the router or the CPE in the home, or maybe even the use of satellite. So at one point I did want to mention is that, and it's been covered extensively, I know, in Spanish media, we've published our data, that we did see a number of different satellite services, you know, experience increased use and uptake during the period of the actual outage itself. So obviously it's not the case of people getting delivered dishes on the day of the outage, but you know, those that had them had them there as a redundancy measure. They may have had, you know, power banks to be able to use to Starlink terminals, for example. And we actually have seen since the outage a record sustained and persistent increased usage profile for Starlink. So it seems like this particular outage has provoked a step change in behavior and use of satellite services, you know. And obviously, they are not a replacement for terrestrial in any way, shape, or form. But certainly, I think more enterprises will be looking at non-terrestrial options for redundancy and resilience. So we were able to see, for example, with Starlink on the day of the outage, that the performance degraded substantially on the latency side, which reflects the fact that after several hours, the ground stations in Spain went offline, but they were able to switch then to ground stations in the likes of London and Italy, which just shows that kind of the resiliency of that kind of a system like that, which is multi-country, multi-geography, and can provide that better redundancy and resilience. So I suppose that's you know, some of the key insights on our side. As I mentioned, we will be publishing MNO level data very soon. So looking at the Spanish operators and looking at the maps for the operators, looking at the waveforms for each operators, you know, providing the unobscured view of this, for example, for Portugal and all of that. So some very detailed data. We hope it will contribute to the discussion in public. I know in Spain there's been kind of a vacuum of information around the impact of the outage on telecommunications network, and we hope that this independent source you know, will spur more discussion and help policymakers, I suppose, look at ways to better prepare for future events. You know, we've looked at the impact of outages in the likes of, I mentioned, UK, Ireland. There was also severe localized degradation in service quality. But we have seen countries, the likes of the Nordics, for example, have invested very heavily in stipulating minimum hours of battery autonomy in towns and villages over a certain population size. And there has been fiscal, I suppose, stimuli offered by government to support that. The Australian government in, I think, New South Wales, for example, has implemented a lot of network hardening programs whereby mobile sites in rural areas have to be able to withstand and sustain prolonged outages. And even in the US, actually in California, due to the wildfire risk, there's been public funding made available as well for minimum number of hours of continuity. And there's other factors obviously that will skew the likes of this peak beyond the geographical location of subscribers. Also, RAN sharing, for example, can have a big impact. So I know that there are some MNOs obviously that share parts of their active network, and they maybe geographically have different regions where they look after. We can see that in Portugal, for example, where some regions with some MNOs or some vendors maybe perform a little bit better than others, and I suppose there's going to be questions there and what can be learned. So when you have a deep level of sharing, your fortune is almost locked to the person you're sharing with, and that's another important point to mention. So I think that's all from my side. I'm very happy to take any questions afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luke. Impressive report, impression analysis, and we're looking forward to your final report. And definitely metrics are the key for evidence-based policy making. So yeah, I'm sure governments worldwide will use this kind of independent data for their decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Carmen, representing Digitales. So we're talking about the Iberian case. You know a lot about the Spanish case. So could you please share with us the efforts that Spanish operators had done during the emergencies, late emergencies, and maybe the measures for improving the resilience for future situations?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, at the end of the University Polytechnic of Valencia and permanent representative of Spain, President Marta, thank you very much. And thank you also, Ima, for having us, Digitales. Digitales is the Spanish Association for Digitalization. That means that we converge and we represent not only all the telecom operators, including Digi, which I'm not seeing there, but in any case, yes, Digi, and all the tower co, and well, among 60 companies, you can imagine that we have a lot. And when Ima called us and invited us to give our experience over the floods and the blackout, I have to say that we have a lot of experience, more than expected, kind of some time ago. But I'm not going to repeat what you just have been said, but I think it's important to underline what Permanent Representative Dedin and also Mr. Sinan said before. And these two experiences, it was a clear reminder that in this interconnected society, power and connectivity are inseparable. Telecommunication networks, for sure, are the invisible infrastructure of the digital world, and we were deeply impacted. Speaking about the blackout, and as Luke showed us a lot of examples and data, I'm going to put it in the floor. I'm going to, put the examples of what has been done. There was no time for prior warning. Telecom operators activated all their emergency protocols and immediately. The crisis committees were convened and teams worked day and night to restore the grid or lost services. So the first line of response relied on the autonomy of technical sites, as you were saying. When the grid failed, mobile networks switched to batteries and generators. But these are limited resources with only a few hours of autonomy. Therefore, generators were quickly mobilized to extend coverage, prioritizing critical services, as you were saying before, obviously, like hospitals, emergency centers, and security forces. However, the challenge was not only power supply. As you were indicating, the problem is that there were so many people without service for so many times. So what happened? Antennas, the antennas who were and remain operational, the traffic surged beyond capacity. So demand collapsed the system. Recovery required gradual reactivation of infrastructure as the power returned with manual intervention, and that's really to keep into mind, and coordination across regions. And each region has its own logistical barriers. So it wasn't easy, but I think we managed. And then just referring to last October, the Dana floods presented a different but equal severe challenge. Over 300,000 people lost mobile services and more than 220,000 lost landline access. So the torrential rain and winds damaged base stations, flooded technical sites, and affected fiber optic lines. So operators, what do you do? Well, they responded with both immediate relief and technical action. Immediate relief, it means free unlimited mobile data and calls were offered to all residents in affected areas, as well as obviously emergency teams to ensure communication where it was more needed. Not to, I mean, the physical damage was massive, was extensive, and some areas were absolutely unreachable. So to restore those, to restore connectivity in those areas, temporary mobile stations were deployed, some satellite-based, as you were saying. Telefonica, as an example, used mobile units and satellite phones. Masarange deployed 12 mobile stations and 200 field technicians. Vodafone sent more than 250 persons to, and set up 7 satellite Wi-Fi networks offering services in a 400-meter radius to cities and authorities. And they deployed more than 400 employees in the area to carry out maintenance work and minimize impact. So in addition to setting up these temporary fiber connections, Wi-Fi access was enabled so that it could address also 2 urgent needs for communication in the initial moments. And moreover, operators, together with other actors, as tower cos and some companies, and also with Digitales and other associations, we signed an agreement with the Minister of Digitalization, committing to additional measures for developing the deployment of networks, obviously, but also like really urgent needs, free SIM replacement, device replacement, improved customer services, or obviously automatic compensation through discounts for the lost services. Yeah, I will stop here because we can, go around these examples, but I think it gives the idea. Thank you, Ima.
Thank you very much, Carmen. It's extremely insightful, your perspective from the real sector. And congratulations for all the effort you made to keep connectivity both in Dana and also the quick recovery after the blackout. Okay. So we have online Mr. Daisuke Yamakawa.
Hello. Can you hear me and can you see me clearly?
Yes, we can see you. Thank you. Mr. Daisuke Yamakawa, you in Japan faced a severe earthquake in the Noto Peninsula, the 1st of January, 2024, which impacted communication networks a lot. So could you share your experience on the earthquake effect and also the role of the ministry, you come from the ministry, had in enhancing network resilience during this event? Thank you. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for asking and thank you for inviting me to this event. Yeah, I read this report that OECD published last week, having a lot of initiatives and policy framework that we have to run. Congratulations, Secretariat, on successful publication of this meaningful report. Also, thank you for explanation here today. I learned what Japan has to do, and this information enables us to improve Japan's digital infrastructure. Okay, today, I'd like to introduce Japan's experience, including recovery responses that we implemented last year, and Japan's policy to ensure robust digital infrastructure. This is my pleasure to be able to share our knowledge with you all today and discuss what measure can be taken. Okay, let me share my presentation, so please hold on. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, let's dive into the actual case. As the most recent big earthquake I would like to introduce the Noto Peninsula earthquake that occurred last year. This earthquake occurred on January 1st, 2024 in the central area of Japan. It was a massive earthquake with a magnitude of 7.6. More than 240 people were killed and more than 60,000 buildings are collapsed. And also, I would like to share the damage of the telecommunication sector by this earthquake. This earthquake caused damage with mobile base stations and mobile communication services, which means disrupting the internet service in this area. The left-hand image shows the service status of Japan's largest mobile operator, and the top right-hand images show the damage at the peak of the area affected. So dark green indicates the area where the communication service was disrupted by this earthquake. Pink color shows areas that were not disrupted or emergency restoration has been carried out immediately. And light green indicates the area where service was not available even before this earthquake due to the remote and mountainous regions. In the area near the epicenter, where the damage was especially serious, about 70% of locations had mobile service restored more than 48 hours after this earthquake. Right after the disaster, the top priority was to restore communication networks around the government offices because these offices act as the disaster response centers in Japan. In general, we require the mobile operators to complete the restoration within 72 hours. Afterwards, restoration activity had continued with priority given to the evacuation centers as the critical places. And by mid-January, emergency restoration had been completed, except in areas that were difficult to access. In addition, as shown in the image below left, almost all areas have been recovered at the end of March. Until the damaged mobile phone base station were restored, we used various equipment as shown in these photos. See the photo of the ship base station. The earthquake made it difficult to deploy vehicle-mounted base stations in many coastal areas due to the collapsed roads along the coast. In response to these areas, telecommunication operators deployed the ship base stations at restored services along a 3-kilometer stretch of coastline. Regarding the second picture from the left, non-geostationary satellite antennas were also used. Regarding the third picture from the left, the base station was also operated by using a drone. Flying a drone equipped with the mobile phone antennas, mobile phone service was provided within a 5-kilometer radius. See the picture on the far right. This is a vehicle-mounted base station with mobile phone antennas mounted on the pillars extending upwards from the vehicle. There is also a satellite antenna that can be used when the earthquakes cut off the fiber optic network. In addition, vehicles bring the battery and generators. They provided emergency restoration of mobile phone services in areas where commercial power has not been restored. Mobile phone operators have about 1,000 vehicle-mounted or emergency transportable base stations, and in the case of Noto earthquake, about 100 temporary base stations were operated by mobile phone operators. As described in paragraph 2 and 3, we cooperated with Japan's self-defense forces. They provided the fuel and necessary equipment required for the restoration of the telecommunication infrastructure. Yeah, information becomes very important during the disasters. It is especially important to provide communication services to the government offices that lead disaster response until damaged mobile base stations were restored. Also, giving people in evacuation centers access to communication helps them feel safe and connected. We have communication equipment such as antennas that can connect it to the non-terrestrial network, like satellite networks such as Starlink. We provided this equipment to local governments and evacuation centers in disaster-affected areas. We also set up Wi-Fi in centers so that people could connect their families. These efforts were not implemented by the government alone. We carried out these efforts in cooperation with mobile network operators and other partners. As mentioned in the OECD report, it is important for all stakeholders, such as the government and the mobile home operators, to work together during the normal times to provide disaster recovery and strengthen communication networks against disasters. We are taking several actions, including introducing regulations for communication network equipment and providing subsidies for telecommunication companies to help improve network resilience and creating opportunity for stakeholders to share best practices and promoting roaming agreements between mobile operators. For example, under Japanese regulation, wire-based stations that serve important facilities such as government offices and hospitals must have batteries that allow them to operate for at least 24 hours during a power outage. For government buildings that serve as a disaster response center, the requirement is at least 72 hours of battery backup. To support these efforts, we offer subsidies. Mobile operators can use these subsidy policies not only for installing batteries, but also for purchasing mobile base stations that are vehicle-mounted or portable. In addition, we regularly hold meetings with stakeholders to share knowledge and experiences in order to improve disaster preparation. Okay, this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I hope this information helped to consider new approaches. Thank you.
From regulation to subsidies to coordination efforts. So thank you very much for sharing your experience. Just to conclude the panel, thank you again, the three of you, very insightful contributions. Just a rapid fire, 30 seconds answer of the key takeaways of your opinion to enhance network resilience and policy recommendations. So
I'll say myself. Very quick,
yeah,
because it's too late. First of all, we confirmed that the critical role of connectivity infrastructure. And this means that we must treat digital infrastructure as essential and ensure the strength of sector that supports it. To do that, investment is crucial. Improving the resilience of networks is not just a technical necessity, it's an economic challenge. Batteries, generators, satellite backups, mobile stations, none of these are viable without sustained investment. And this investment can only happen if the sector is strong and competitive. Second, resilience cannot be achieved by private sector alone. Public-private cooperation is essential. Governments must not only co-invest, but also facilitate through permits, rapid deployment approvals, and enabling policies. This is not just about funding, it's about creating a framework where swift action is possible. Mr. Sian was referring at this message before. And third, the regulatory framework needs to evolve. It's no longer enough to focus on connectivity, coverage, and affordability alone. Regulation must also incorporate resilience and sustainability, recognizing the interconnected nature of modern infrastructures.
Thank you very much. Very
You're welcome.
insightful. Luke, please.
Well, I would absolutely really re-emphasize everything that was said there, and in particular, I think one of the areas there's a real room for improvement is around information sharing and transparency, both at a government level around the I suppose the penetration of battery backup and redundancy in commercial mobile networks, and at the operator level as well in terms of sharing with regulators and all of that. So I'd say information sharing, transparency is a really important one, in particular, as well to enable benchmarking of countries against one another and how they perform. I know there are some regulators, the likes of Ofcom now in the UK, that is engaged in a detailed consultation with MNOs at the moment around looking at increasing resiliency measures. And they have published some information around the penetration of battery backup in the UK, but in many countries that data is very, very limited. So I would definitely say information sharing, transparency. I think public subsidy is a huge one. It's obviously not going to be economically viable for MNOs to do this in a standalone fashion, certainly not up to the standard that's needed. We've seen preliminary pricing calculated by the likes of Ofcom for rolling out battery backup to the UK. I think a minimum of 2 hours was quoted at, over £2 billion. So it's a highly expensive investment and will need to be supported. And exactly. And we have seen MNOs in the Nordics, the likes of Elisa, have been able to use battery backup as well, by the way, to monetize some of their estate. So, reselling power to the grid for grid stability, things like that. So there is opportunities there for MNOs as well, I would say. And yes, I think certainly that kind of diversity, I think that was a brilliant example around the inter-network roaming, which I know already is something that takes place in most countries for emergency calling. If you're in a location where there's no service on one network, it will be seamlessly handed over to another one. And that is something certainly that could be looked at for disaster scenarios, and of course, satellite as well. And I think, Starlink is one. In itself, that poses risks relying on one satellite constellation that's outside the control of Europe. So I would say, things like the Iris Squared program that the European Commission is investing in, Amazon's Kuiper, all of these kind of the proliferation of different non-terrestrial solutions, I think as well will help us improve resilience. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Luke. And Mr. Daisuke, do you want to add something? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, I believe that communication and collaboration are definitely important. And the OECD report says working together between government and all partners is very important. And it also talks about using new technologies. I think that these efforts must start before earthquake happens, because it takes time to build strong collaboration and relationship between all the people involved. There is no doubt that government has important roles, but the government capacity is also limited. So we also need to think again about what kind of systems and rules are needed to fully use skills and resources of all stakeholders. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Daisuke. So thank you to all speakers, and for this engaging solution, I have taken some notes just to summarize. We have seen how Ooklas metrics analysis reveal the vulnerability of mobile networks, basically, during power outages, and the importance of power redundancy and to suppress the delay. And we also heard from Digitales about the collaborative efforts of key digital players in Spain, and to ensure that we're resilient, and especially during the recent blackout, but also during the DANA. And finally, we have learned about Japan's perspective in deploying emergency solutions to secure communication networks during natural disasters, such as the earthquake, and also the proactive action of the ministry in this kind of policies in this domain. So I think that overall the discussion underscores the critical need of robust policies, strategic planning, collaborative efforts, and this is where OECD comes to help. So happy to share best practices and give the platform for sharing the knowledge. So with that, we conclude this session. Thank you very much to our panelists online here. Let's continue to work together within a more resilient communication infrastructure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Immaculada, and thank you all, our panelists, for our outstanding discussion. It was an incredibly insightful session. The practical cases from Japan and Spain clearly illustrated the real-world impact of disruptive events on networks. As we conclude our event, I would like to emphasize the critical role of telecommunications engineers in this field. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Mrs. Marta Valenciaga Rieta, Dean of the Professional Association of Telecommunications Engineers, who will deliver our closing remarks. Marta, please.
Thank you very much, Sergio. As we come to the end of this important event and we are out of time, first of all, I'd like to thank the OECD for choosing Spain and the city of Valencia to present a report of great strategic value, and for giving the Professional Association of Telecommunication Engineers of Spain, which I'm honored to represent, the opportunity to participate in this closing session. This report arrives at a critical moment. The digital transformation of our societies is advancing at an unprecedented pace, but with it, so are the challenges. This document not only offers a comprehensive analysis of current threats and vulnerabilities, but also proposes practical and cooperative solutions to make our communication networks more resilient, secure, and prepared for an uncertain future. Listening to the experts in the panel discussion, we can confirm an essential truth. The resilience of our networks is not an option, but a strategic necessity that directly affects the security, the economy, and the quality of life of our citizens. We have experienced this firsthand in Spain. It has been mentioned before, and reminded us that without connectivity, everything else stops, from emergency services to citizens' daily communications. Resilience refers to maintain and quickly restore functionality, but this is mainly grounded in the ability to anticipate. It means being prepared for incidents, and to achieve this, as the report indicates, we must rely on redundant networks, coordinated response processes, and regulatory frameworks that support innovation without leaving gaps. And it also means having the political will, promoting effective public-private collaboration, and undertaking the necessary review of existing regulatory policies. And this is precisely what we advocate for and to which we offer our full collaboration. We cannot ask operators to multiply their efforts with investments in innovation and redundant and diversified infrastructure without offering them a regulatory environment that fosters those investments. It's time to address a smart deregulation that will create a powerful, robust, and truly resilient sector. Many thanks to the OECD for this valuable report, to the speakers for their contributions and their commitment, and to all attendees, both in person and online, for joining us. This report is not a final destination. It's a starting point for developing strategies that provide the continuity and stability required by the communication networks that support all our daily activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marta. As we bring this event to a close, I would like to once again express our sincere gratitude to the OECD for choosing Valencia as the venue for this important report. Our thanks also go to all the panelists. Thank you very much for the insightful contributions and for sharing real-world experiences that have enriched today's discussion. A heartfelt thank you to our audience here in the room, and also as well as those joining us via the live stream. With that, the launch event is now concluded. Thank you all very much.